An ageing population, a low birth rate and a national preference for part-time work. Germany's labour market is shrinking fast. In the next 5 years, the country's working age population is expected to decline more than any other G7 economy, putting strain on both the pension system and employers' ability to fill positions. The government is under pressure to take action, and so far there are a number of options on the table. I spoke to Professor Ulrike Malmendier, one of the 5 members of Germany's Council of Economic Experts, about what can be done. I began by asking her whether she thinks the retirement age should be raised.
Indeed, I do think we have to reform the rules for retirement age. So one proposal we had, for example, is nothing as drastic as you sometimes hear in the press, everybody can't retire, nobody can retire before 70, but indeed to look at age, say 65, what is the remaining life expectancy? And we see that grows about every 10 years by 9 months. So how about we split that up 2 to 1, right? So every 10 years we have like a 6 months more time to work before you can retire. That seems like an appropriate mechanism for us. We think it's a must that you adjust lifetime period of work, and ideally it would be automatized. A second aspect is there are possibilities to retire early in Germany. If you have been a working member of the community for a long time, for example, 45 years, then you can even do it without any deductions. It turns out that practically speaking, it is often people who have relatively high, medium-high income, who are in relatively good health. So that's certainly not what maybe the legislator was targeting initially. So what we are proposing is you still want to keep in mind people who had lots of psychological or physical stressors, and you do want to allow them after 45 years of working to retire early, but let's target those rather than the majority who's taking advantage of it now. Often that's the low-income sector, so here we need another reform.
Okay, so that's interesting. Another option is to incentivize working longer hours by reforming the tax code. Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I want to see in practice which sectors would be particularly affected, how much bang for the buck would be there. There have been some experiments in other countries that were successful, others less so. Given that attitudes towards work-life balance are changing, attitudes to how many hours I do want to work are changing, I just do want to be sure about the elasticities, as we economists tend to call it, but I think it is definitely a valid proposal which we should investigate.
What about further immigration reform, much more radical than the one we've seen so far?
Yeah, so it is fairly clear that if we want to keep up with the level of services and the welfare we have right now in Germany, none of these reforms we discussed before will suffice. We will drop off. The volume of hours is simply too low because we are aging too fast. And the only fix, unless AI magically solves it for us, is to have to incentivize people to come to Germany and work here. And indeed, we would need more radical reforms to do so. That doesn't mean that they need to happen tomorrow. To change the nature of a country in terms of the population around can have political repercussions. It can lead to extreme voting. So a clear separation of immigration to increase the workforce versus people who are fleeing from their country, a clear separation of legal and illegal immigration is important to make it digestible to the population, to make it really clear what we are aiming for and how we are trying to support the German population today.
But aren't those two groups often the same ones? People who are fleeing their countries can be a great asset to the labour force.
Indeed, indeed. So often we have benefited as a country from those. I'm sorry to say for Ukraine that the Ukrainian people who had to leave their country were actually quite helpful to us in Germany. So indeed, my separation right now didn't mean there shouldn't be a transition from one group to the other group. But I do think that those parts of the population who feel that they are not listened to when they talk about illegal immigration need to be reassured, yes, they are listened to. What we have in mind here is to help all of us to provide a number of hours worked, which we need in Germany.
If I'm understanding you right, you feel that there's a whole sector of society that is not really being listened to. What do they need? in terms of reforms?
What do
People who are discontent, who don't like these discussions about letting more immigrants in, who maybe feel they're not doing well themselves?
Yeah, so I think I do not think that there's necessarily a type of reform they need. I do think clearer communication and clearer illustration of what the benefits are for all of us, not only in the specific sectors where the workforce is missing and people are stepping in, but also for enriching our life in this country. So I live in a very diverse community in the US, in Berkeley, and I'm benefiting in so many ways from that diversity, from these different nationalities. So making people see those advantages is what I would be aiming for. How to best do that? Well, I'm an economist, so I might not be the right person to talk to about that, but clearer communication, clearer highlighting of examples which show how both sides really benefit from that is certainly something where I think there's room for improvement in Germany.
All right, Professor Ulrike Malmendier, thank you so much for talking to us today.
It was wonderful to talk to you. Thank you very much.